All right, Jono. So tell us about living in Oman. When did you move there?
Straight into it. When did I move there? It was in 2000, beginning 2009. End of 2008, beginning 2009, right about there. Tell you about living there.
Yeah. What was it like living there?
There's a lot to say about living there. Well, I'll put it out there first of all, I didn't want to move there at all.
Okay.
When my dad said,
Because you were 14 when you moved there.
I was 14 when I moved there. And to understand why my old man wanted to move there in the first place, I've mentioned it before. My mum passed away. She died from lung cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Non-smoker. Just was what it was. And my dad's best friend Carl actually got headhunted to basically lead the electricity and water company in Oman. So they were both working for Western Power, which was obviously it's the same sort of industry in Western Australia. He got headhunted, and the person that headhunted him asked him to bring a few of his friends that he knew that he could work with, and so my dad being his best friend got brought over. When he told me, I was like, nah, I'm not really keen to go, I've set up my life here. It's hard to understand.
Because you'd been living in Perth for how many years up until this point?
Up until that point, around 10 years, about a decade.
Okay, so you felt settled. You felt like really Australian.
I felt Australian.
Yeah,
I felt settled. I don't know. I don't think anyone likes to get their life uprooted.
Okay.
Now, when I was 14, no one likes that.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously when you're young, you don't have any control of it because you do what your parents say. So I didn't want to move there at first, but I can safely say that like the experiences I had there really consistently impacted me.
Okay, that's cool.
Through to this day.
Before you tell us about living there, do you hold any resentment against your dad for making you go?
Definitely not.
That's cool.
Definitely.
That's cool.
Yeah, my dad's like easily the most important person in my life, easily.
Oh, that's really nice. And I imagine obviously when your mum passed away, it would have brought you closer as well.
It did, but I think it took a while. Like me and my dad were always close. Actually, my dad and anyone has not been always close. He's someone that people get along with immediately.
Okay.
He's got a very, like smiley nature. He's very cheerful. He'll always look out for other people before himself to a fault.
Nice.
And that he did that for us, but we didn't know that because at the time, he's not trying to reveal any burdens or things that would set us back. We were pretty young, but yeah, he went through imagine what I went through as like a son, and imagine what he went through to basically lose the love of his life, and then trying to make any sort of reason about it. And my mum was part of that reasoning.
Yeah, and and he went to run the state water company of Oman. Or was it a private company?
It was a private company.
Okay.
But it was the company that sort of controlled controlled the electricity and water running around.
Like a very serious promotion.
Yeah, well, I think he was actually CFO of the company at that time.
Okay, nice.
So pretty high up. He's always worked with numbers. He's always worked with money. So yeah.
And your sisters. So it's all sisters you have, right?
Got 2 sisters. I got 2 brothers.
Oh, okay. So 4 siblings, 2 sisters, 2 brothers. Is your dad equally close with all of them as well?
Yes, but I think he's got favourites.
Okay. All right. So you've just been uprooted to Oman. As an Australian and having lived in Sydney my whole life, that is completely foreign world. Did you have to learn any sort of Arabic to get by, or?
I didn't have to learn any sort of Arabic. I actually went to an international school. So it was actually called American British Academy. So it's called ABA.
Nice. Very, very English.
Very English,
yeah.
But the mix of people there was there was no sort of like heavy majority of like American or British.
Okay.
For that matter, it was everywhere, anywhere, and everywhere.
Nice.
So yeah, English is well spoken there. Even Omanis do. They all speak. Be it shit English, you can communicate in English.
Okay.
I did learn some, simple Arabic stuff like words and how to swear, how to direct a taxi driver home, how to order food.
Yeah.
Just if you're in those situations where they really can't speak, but you'll find 95% of the time they can speak English.
Was it so the years you were there would have been 2010s ish?
Yeah, 2008 to 2012.
Was there any political unrest in the country at the time? Like, did you experience any sort of danger while living there?
So Oman, in terms of Middle East, is actually a super safe place. So the Sultan, who's actually recently passed away, and actually one of my really good friends I went to high school with, dad is now the Sultan, which is another story.
Oh, that's cool. It's a serious network.
It's a huge network.
Yeah.
Like I can go straight to the top.
Yeah.
Like on my phone. Like.
Oh, well, I mean, like you could take over the like the tourism marketing wing of Oman. You know, just through friends and family.
We'll see how it goes. But he's a very awesome bloke. Very like quite reserved dude, obviously, because he was part of the royal family. But yeah, the Sultan, everyone loved the Sultan. That's also another crazy story because he essentially threw a military coup to overtake his father to be the Sultan when it first happened. I think it was close to 50 years he was in rule. So he only very recently died, as in like this year, a few months ago.
Okay.
So, and he didn't have a hair. So there was rumours that he might have been gay, but obviously you can't really speak about that, like with all the laws and stuff that's out there. So he didn't actually have a sort of heir to the sultanship. So no one actually knew who was going to be chosen.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it was pretty crazy.
So is it far less a conservative branch of Islam in Oman?
I don't want to say it's more conservative, but you know.
Because even the suspicion that he would be gay would be.
Yeah, but
life-ending.
The Sultan's loved. Like everybody has a photo of him in his car. Everyone has a photo of them in their house. Like.
Is it propaganda or does he earn it?
No, he earns it.
That's cool.
Yeah, he's earned it. He earned my respect.
Yeah.
And I've seen Oman over the last decade, which sounds crazy, but I've seen it evolve over the last decade.
Yeah.
It's crazy to see the advancements.
It's amazing that you've gone before the time you're 19, like so many places that mean a lot to you. Because it was Singapore you started in, and then Perth, and then Oman. But tell us more about Oman, just before we leave there.
Oman's a crazy place. It's a small place. The expat community was bigger then than it is now because Oman's realising that they can't just keep paying expats to come in and do jobs that Omanis otherwise could do. The work culture is a different story there, so you know it's kind of like there's this work that they have there called Inshallah, which means like God willing. So you could ask someone like, "Oh, is this going to be done?" It's like Inshallah. Like, is that yes or no? No one knows. Just God willing. Will it be done tomorrow? Inshallah, it'll be done tomorrow. Yeah. It's like no one knows. So like, that's the kind of work culture they kind of carry. You know, it's like island time. Things are going to get done.
Nice.
When they get done, they leave something to the imagination.
Yeah.
But everyone's beautiful there. Everyone's nice. It's chill there. It's amazing. Like I'm a big fan of the outdoors and nature. You can drive out of the city for like a couple of hours and you'll be the only person there. Do you know what I mean?
Is it green?
Green. It's beautiful.
No way, really?
They've got mountains, they've got desert, they've got coasts, they've got everything.
Fuck, it's wild how some of these countries slip under the radar. It's a great destination to go to. Like, I think along the lines of Turkey and Afghanistan in the same boat. Just places which I've never been, but you just have to do a quick Google image search and you realize that they've got amazing mountains, amazing valleys, super fertile as well. Christopher Hitchens said it going through Iraq. He was a journalist that reported in Iraq a lot, and he was trying to dispel this narrative that it was just a barren wasteland and it was just desert everywhere, because it's just not true. Like, it's called the Fertile Crescent for a reason. You know, civilization started there. Like, you can grow almost anything in the Middle East, and I suppose Oman. Because just to remind me and the listeners,
where
it's
it is
yeah.
Okay, if you think about Oman, it's actually it looks like a boot, so like Italy but chunkier. You know, like if Italy was like a stiletto, this is like a Blunston or whatever. Like it's a good boot shape. It's on the Gulf. Borders Yemen, Saudi, and the United Arab Emirates. It pops up right there.
Interesting. Yeah. How do you think bordering Saudi, bordering the UAE, do they have a lot of oil money as well?
Yeah, dude. Oil is the main. It's crazy. The oil chat is crazy. So obviously, oil is part of the reason why the Middle East has been so prosperous over the last couple of years, and recent times. It's still interesting to follow the petroleum industry, but a bulk of the people that get moved over there for expats are working directly for petroleum companies.
Okay.
and will be there really as long as they want.
Are these oil companies state-owned in Oman as well?
No, mostly it's like Shell or big like.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, because that is a fundamental difference between a lot of the other Arab states with their oil. Like, so I guess that means that the finances aren't directly funneled into whoever the monarchy, whoever the ruling class is. Is there a lot of poverty and inequality in Oman?
No, not really.
Because there's a really good social safety system.
Good social safety system. Yeah, there really is. Like, if you don't have a job in Oman, you can put yourself on a waiting list where the government will find a job for you and call you and tell you you have an interview next week.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Everyone lives well there. Crime rate, pretty much non-existent.
Yeah.
There's not really any struggles. Like, just to paint the picture, like Muscat is basically the capital city and it's where most business gets done.
Mm-hmm.
So if you live outside of Muscat, you really have to be quite niche in what you do as like for a living. So a lot of people travel into Muscat for work and back home again. But there's a lot of people, there's Bedouins, there's things, people that live outside of it. It's actually why, so the petroleum chat, so it's actually why Oman has really started doing this thing called Omanization, which is what I was talking about, not allowing new expats into the country. In fact, I think it's around 70% at the end of this year. If your contract isn't renewed, you will have to, like, expats will have to leave. There's new laws being passed today where, you know, if you're working an expat for X company and your contract runs out, you have more options to go into another sort of sector of business.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, they're in a weird way culling expats in a way to boost.
That's good.
Oman.
It's a sustainable track to go down. It'd be really interesting to see how they end up going, because that sort of predisposes that you have a good education system, and the Omanis will add as much value as the expats do, which will be, you know, it's always difficult to contend with English, Australian, American schools and the sort of experience that you learn in these institutions. But interesting, that's cool. But not to get too hung up on Oman, because we spoke about it for quite a while actually.
Cut it.
But tell me, so you were 19 when you came back to Australia, which means, did you drink when you were in Oman? Is it illegal to drink there?
It's not illegal to drink there. It's not dry. If you have an alcohol license, you can buy alcohol. If you're a little ratbag kid like me, you can go into bars and meet security guards and Omanis that will sell you alcohol.
Yeah.
I was clubbing when I was like 15 there.
Oh, it's so sick, man. To have these sort of experiences abroad, like, and I suppose all the other kids you would have been with also. Was there a like-mindedness you found? There's
a like-mindedness. There's like the status quo of how everyone like lives is different to how you would live in Australia. I don't know. It's a mentality thing, you know. Like a lot of these kids have been moving around their whole life. Like it's this whole third culture kid community. It's hard to understand what that is until you know you live it, and then you only talk to your third culture kids about specific things. Like it's so crazy. Like so many of my friends don't know anything about my life there. Like I did so much. For example, I brought one of my friends like Sikhs over a couple summers ago, and you know, me and all my friends meet up from my school when they were coming from Canada, from South Africa, from Vietnam, from Switzerland, from Germany, from wherever, literally everywhere in the world. And he was just like, you know all these guys? I'm like, these are all like my best friends.
That's so amazing.
Which is cool to it's crazy to say.
I've met, I was friends, my girlfriend was really good friends with one girl called Alex Sanchez, and I worked with her, and she was similarly, her father worked for the UN, and so she grew up in Peru, Switzerland, and America. And I always, like, when she spoke about it as well, she had like just the fondest memories, but she also, there was a part of her that missed a stage of development, you know, because I think in all of her schools that she had to go through, there was never a chance to like be a naughty kid, and you didn't have like this stable group of friends you could rely on to go back to, and that might be the case with like a lot of kids who move around multiple cities when they're young, but obviously not the case for you in Oman.
I mean, it is true. Like I think I'm really terrible at goodbyes for that reason, because you say goodbye to people left, right, and centre every
time.
summer, every winter. No one stays in Oman for any holidays. Everyone's going home,
True.
wherever that is to them.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, that's everywhere.
Yeah.
When I say everywhere, I literally mean everywhere.
Mm.
And so like it's just this understanding of like how can we have divides about race and culture, about like differences in ideologies or whatever. But when I lived there, I had no one of any specific religion, race, anything did anything to me for me to believe otherwise. And these are the people I hang out with. My best friend was English, or from New Zealand, also Nigerian, like Danish, like I don't see any difference in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been so privileged to live in a situation where I can understand that, because you can't get appreciation for something until you experience it, and that's a lot of what the problem is. You
would have had an emotional maturity. You would have hit an emotional maturity much quicker than your peers, single schooled like myself and the kids I went to school with, because even to acknowledge the fact that someone's from Denmark who has this set of ideologies, then your other mate's from Vietnam who has this set of ideologies, but you're all sort of mates in the middle. One obviously makes you just smarter because you're learning more about the world and the fact that people do think differently, which is something I didn't figure out till I was like 20, first time I left the country, or like typically people won't learn until they meet the other ideas, because you'll hear about them, but until you actually meet the other ideas. But so this obviously would make for a bit of a shock when you come back to Australia, because that's when you move to Sydney. But before you go into that, we'll just introduce you. And so you're Jono Tan. We're mates from working together at Fresh Catering a couple of years ago. And now you're working for a company called We Are Explorers, and you take care of the content creation primarily for this company. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, my official title was social media manager and content producer, but because we're such a small company, there's large overlaps in what I have to do.
And what's your like career ambition, your sort of life ambition?
I don't know if
With work.
With work, it kind of changes all the time. I know I want to start my own business at some stage in my life. I consider this sort of like a learning process. I mean, every day is a learning process, but I've always worked for small businesses. I've always liked working for businesses where I know who owns the company is.
Mm-hmm.
I like that connection. I could never work in anywhere that's too big, where I don't know the founders. I don't know the founder's partner. I don't know his kids. I don't. That doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah.
I enjoy a holistic experience, I guess.
That's nice. And speaking from experience, working in a company like that just allows you to add so much of your own value. Like as soon as you enter the bureaucratic company where immediately your manager, but you'll never even talk to his manager, all of a sudden you're like, whatever value you can add to that organization is singular.
Yeah.
It's right along the line of your job description, and so the opportunity to be able to contribute elsewhere, obviously is gone.
For sure. I think one of the major things for me is like seeing a direct like cause and effect relationship. Like everything I do gets seen.
Yeah.
By everyone. It keeps me honest. It keeps us honest.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important for me.
That's great. I mean, it doesn't allow you to slack. It's also good for the leaders as well to keep everyone below them accountable. And so we will go on to speak of more like just developmental, where you've gone dips in your life, and obviously there's a big accident which almost left you dead, let alone blind, which we'll talk about as well. But before we get to that, let's tell me about the culture shock, if that's the right way to put it, because that might not be the truth. But when you come back from Oman to Sydney, so why did you decide to come back to Sydney versus elsewhere? Because I assume that's when you finished school.
Yeah. I always knew from a young age, as soon as I left high school, I would leave my family. I don't know. Like in a way, I was an adult as a baby, if that makes sense. Like due to my family's circumstances or whatever. Like I was grown when I was 14. I washed my own clothes, did my own cooking, walked home every day myself. If I need to get anywhere, I sorted that myself. Like it all comes with like sort of like single parent living in a weird country and you're just trying to like. Yeah, it's formidable years.
Mm-hmm.
But I was an adult when I was young, and so I already knew I was going to leave home. Why did I come back to Australia? Mostly because of like the sort of security, I guess, like an Australian citizen. So you're entitled to certain government benefits, and university is cheaper, and all that sort of stuff. So I knew I wanted to come back to Australia. I definitely knew I didn't want to go back to Perth. Choosing between Melbourne and Sydney, I chose Sydney.
Okay, nice. And you were 19?
Yes.
Great. So we actually would have met quickly after you came back.
Yeah.
Did you have any friends when you moved to Sydney?
I knew no one here.
So how did you go about setting up your life?
Day at a time.
Yeah.
Day at a time, I guess. I don't know. I've just always backed myself. I don't know. I don't know.
Oh,
if that's a
got
good
to back yourself.
I
Yeah,
don't know if
100%.
that's a good explanation for it. It's just
Sure.
like, will I have challenges? Yes. Will I overcome them? I know for sure I will.
So then you came here and undertook a university degree and got a job at Fresh Catering. How'd you get a job at Fresh? I always thought maybe your mates were back or something.
No.
Okay.
Pretty funny because like after I started working Fresh, like a whole bunch of my mates started working Fresh.
Okay, yeah.
It was funny, and I didn't realize I was the original one. But back to how I got that job. Actually, a really funny story. When I came here, someone was talking to me about being like in movie extras, when you get paid to literally just stand around and just like be an extra in a movie. So I went to this spot and they were like, "Oh yeah, you got to take photos, like do some stuff." And I was like, "Okay, whatever. Like it pays pretty well. I'll just sit here." And I actually met one of the casting guys that was there, and he was like really liked. We just had a bit of back and forth, and he was like, "Oh, like we're looking for someone to work here, doing this, right?" I was like, "Oh, this is cool. Consider doing that." So I was waiting for him to like kind of follow that up, and then I went to another interview with Fresh, and I got that job. And I was like, "This is cool. I want to work in like bars and stuff." And
because it was a cool company to work for.
it was a cool company.
Yeah.
It was a good company. I don't know about now. At the time, it was a great company to work for.
Yeah.
And it was very flexible. You know, if I want to go on holiday for 3 months and come back, I could work the day of. I came back if I so wanted to.
Yeah.
Because I knew the managers and the.
And you also were a reliable staff person to be put on. Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah.
So, but how did you find the interview? Like, how did you find Fresh?
The interview was weird because I remember I dressed up for it. I dressed up in like a nice shirt and pants for it. And if I had to go back and do the interview again, I would not have done that. But you know,
seeing some of the people they hired,
yeah, exactly, yeah, you know. But like, yeah, it all stemmed back to the point that I was like, I'm taking responsibility here. What would I feel like I need to do? And so I did that. But I don't know, like, I think it was very important for me to work in hospitality. I think everyone should work in hospitality for like a month, you know? Understanding like how to like interact with strangers or how to just shit chat.
I think it organises your brain a bit too.
Organisation. Working was important. Like I knew I wanted to work straight away when I got here. That wasn't to just be like, oh, I want to make my own money or whatever. But I knew that learning how to like work with people. I always like people. I always play team sports. I always liked that. So it was natural for me to, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel the same about everyone should work hospitality. Just at some stage, especially early on, I'm trying to get my brother to do it now, who's just turned 19, because like it's not about cleaning dishes or serving a drink. Like that actually gets old pretty quick. At least I thought it did, because I did most of my shit as a Cornerstone, you know, which is like a kind of boutique cocktail bar / cafe. Best part 100% is like serving the people and just like walking around and clearing the tables, you know, because it's like there's the weirdest skills you pick up. Having an eye for a bit of detail, having an eye for something when it's wrong, having an eye for improvement, understanding guest experience, being able to just take a lot of shit and understand that there's some certain situations require a hierarchy, and I got in a lot of trouble at school, you know, and like that's a good lesson to learn. Like although some authorities are stupid, sometimes you just have to accept that some authorities are going to exist, you know, and like hospitality is great at that, because if you're rude to a client, you're not going to get another shift, are you know? Yeah,
that's it. I think it was important, man. I just think it was important for me to learn how to like interact with strangers, and be comfortable with that.
I felt that most on the wedding shifts, like the biggest, where the social became the biggest part of it, because you have so much standing around, so much standing in the kitchen, so much interaction with guests as they progressively got drunker. Like,
yeah, I was lucky because like you start off as waiters, but I was quickly like promoted to, actually I got the head bar,
the barman,
head barman, which is, you know, it's a bit of a wank, but I had to do an extra thing. And being a barman, you kind of have the easiest job on the site in a weird way, because you really have no responsibility except setting up the bar and make sure people get alcohol, which is what they're there to do, but doing it responsibly. So it was easy.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was easy.
It was fantastic. And we worked some amazing venues, you know, because that's an amazing thing for you, like coming into a new city, to have an opportunity to just work at the Museum of Contemporary Art, which overlooks the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. Like, that would have felt pretty special, I'm sure.
And you know what's an underrated point about fresh catering, which we all forget? And I think it's affecting you more than you might think about.
Okay.
And I think it's why I liked it a lot, was because fresh catering hired everyone.
Yeah.
Everybody from everywhere, didn't matter who you were.
Yeah.
And we were always hanging around Aussies and internationals. Where I lived at university, I was always hanging around Aussies and internationals. Like having the sort of blend that like allows you to be like, okay, I'm cool, like I want to do this with just like, you know, a bunch of Aussies or whatever, like, because there's different cultures obviously, but like also being able to be like, okay, on this shift I'm going to be working with a Brazilian, I'm going to be working with a Spanish person, I'm going to be working with a French person.
And the French guy can't speak English.
And they can't speak English. That was sick, dude. And I think that's an underrated part of what made fresh catering unique.
That's actually probably very true, and something that I probably have taken for advantage, or taken whatever, because like there was that prerequisite of Hillsong. You know, if you were part of the church and you'd never picked up a bottle before, that's fine. We'll still give you a job. And obviously that meant there was some shit staff members, but great people. And that is totally true. I think doing that job was one of the best things that accidentally ever happened to me, you know?
I kind of agree.
Because it just got 2 years, working all the time, immediately had money, you know? Because there were weeks where we'd do full-time hours, easy, and had loads of money compared to everyone else, and I was a real saver, which means when I ended up doing stuff, I just had this fucking cash pile that I was sitting on, which is amazing. So yeah. So you've come back to Sydney, right? You're 19 years old, you've taken a degree. What at this point in your life, so this is the first time you've really been separated from your brothers and sisters and father. Are there any difficulties that's faced from that, or is it just kind of easy for you since you've been independent for so long?
It's hard. It's hard. Anyone that moves out of home, especially when you're 18, 19, that's going to be hard. Like, I don't care how independent you are. The first year is always the worst. And everyone tells you that, and you're during the first year, I was like, this is awesome. I'm having an awesome time. I'm controlling what I want to do always. But then if I look back on it, my first year was definitely my worst year. You know, you're trying to figure out, like, and you were talking about, you know, coming back and having that sort of culture shock. It's funny, I had more culture shock coming back to Australia than I did moving to the Middle East.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, so there's all these things that, you know, aren't common practice in the Middle East that are common practice here. You know, we talk about a whole lot of things. Like, I drank a little bit when I was there. Not everyone did. Like, not a lot of people did. There's definitely no drugs out there. The work ethic at school was different. Like, I was a naughty kid like you. I did all sorts of bad shit when I was in high school and back in Perth, like skating, graffitiing, like breaking into places, like stealing shit, like all sorts of stuff.
Really?
All sorts.
Breaking in?
Yeah, it was pretty funny because like, when I left, my student counsellor literally called me into her office and was like, "This is going to be good for you," and then just left. I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Nice. Oh, she knew.
She was right.
Yeah.
She was right. What was her name? Miss Illingsworth, I think her name was.
Nice.
She was a visionary. But yeah, it's a different sort of work ethic. It's a different culture. It's just different in every single regard. It's just different.
Yeah.
But the same diff.
But what about like any like difficulty leaving the family?
The difficulty, it's weird now. So like all my siblings actually live in, like, if you drew a straight line across the earth, like none of us like live in the same spot. Like everyone lives everywhere.
You said Russia?
My little sister's in Perth. My older sister's in Dubai. Going to move to the Netherlands. My dad's in Oman. My little bro's in the Netherlands. My other little bro's in Canada.
They're in the Netherlands?
Yeah. So
what are they doing there?
My little bro's studying
Rotterdam?
Not Rotterdam, Groningen.
Groningen. Artificial intelligence. Red hot. And what about your sister there?
My older sister's working in Dubai. She works for this big...
there was another sister in Holland.
I've got one brother in Holland, one in Canada, and my other sister's in Perth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perth and Dubai, yeah.
So, in a sense, not in a sense, we don't live a normal life. Like, I've never lived a normal life. I don't know what normal is, but I know I'm not normal. And I think that sort of like determined a lot of reasons why I've gone different ways in the forks in the road in my life.
Yeah. You mentioned drugs and alcohol. Have either of them ever like been a problem for you?
Like if I've used alcohol or drugs?
Yeah.
Not really. No. Yeah, when I first came here, I was keen to give everything a go once. Like I've got this thing. Like I said, you can't appreciate things until you experience them. So even if it's gonna make me feel like shit, I'd like to try something.
Mm-hmm.
Like that sounds stupid, but like even to the sense of like dumb shit. Like would I want to be tased? Yeah, tase me.
Yeah.
I want to know what it's like. You know, like do I want to be like struck by lightning? Not really, but let's have a go. Like let's see what that is like. You know, like do I want to go and travel and see like absurd poverty and like compare that to how I live?
I mean, that's definitely an experience you want to see.
Not really, but
no?
like, I mean, as a young child, you know what I mean? Like you don't like, you don't think about that stuff. Now, yes, of course I would, but like, you can't live life without perspective like that, you know? Like what you're doing, what you consider normal or abnormal is completely different to what's normal and abnormal just across the river or across the next country. So like to not experience and understand is like doing a disservice to yourself.
Just to deviate for a moment, you've spoken about fresh catering and your father and your experience in Oman, but now sitting here, 26, what is one other thing apart from your accident that's had a major influence on your life?
So not the accident and not my mum passing away.
Yes, not the accident, not your mum passing away, not Oman, not your father.
What's another thing that's influenced my life?
It doesn't necessarily have to be a moment, but it could just be like a drive, a book, a person, a role model exterior to your family.
Yeah, I have one example. I was always a really like sporty kid. I'm not the most athletic person you'll ever see, but I play like when I used to play sports. I played sports more like I don't know cerebrally. I think you could say like my anticipation was better than most. I'm not LeBron James, but like where I was playing, like I could feel that I wasn't the most athletic, but I was okay. Take for the NBA for example. You have LeBron James, who's freak of nature. Who cares? Like he can do anything. You're gonna hire him. You're gonna pay him millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But then you got other guys in the NBA that are like your average Joe. If you saw him in the street, you wouldn't know that he was in the NBA. But he thinks differently. He understands the game, so he can play the game. He's not Shaquille O'Neal. He's not Kobe Bryant. He's not LeBron. That are all these physically gifted people, but you know they think differently, so they can understand and fit themselves in. So sport was very important to me.
So you appreciate like something, people that are being like super perceptive. Do you apply that to yourself? Like if you're in social situations or work, do you find yourself making a lot of assumptions about things you're perceiving?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I have to check myself a lot because, like I said, I back myself, and like if I think something's correct, I don't mind being proved wrong, but it'll take a lot for you to prove me wrong.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Like you might have it might be as simple as a single sentence answer, and I would welcome that. But for me to like process it and challenge my own thinking, it takes me like a moment. And going back to the whole sports thing, like I had this coach called Mr. Roski. He was a hard ass. And in high school, he was without a doubt the most important person I had in high school.
Nice.
He coached me over a lot of sports because teachers there coach.
Yeah.
And he was this big buff Canadian dude. Made the minor leagues in like American football at one point. So his traps are bigger than your entire body. Like shoulder to ears, his traps. And he was a menace. Like he didn't care. He'd let you know your shit. He'd let you know you're great. He'd let whatever. And I needed that honesty. And I think like obviously going from that period of my life where so much had changed so quickly, I needed someone to just tell me that I wasn't shit. And I continue to know that I'm not shit in this world. You know what I mean? Like I try my best, but you know, it's way bigger than like one person or one community. I mean, we try to work our way there. Yeah. But
that's a really nice memory to have though. Like, I don't think I have any, especially at school, any sort of influence like that.
It was important because like, okay, so in the Middle East, like schools are a little bit different here because like here you got heaps of schools, and when you leave school, you go and do whatever. When we come out of school, like we can do whatever, but like although we don't want to say that like the restrictions of freedom are different. When you're living as an expat in someone else's country, you have to be respectful of what's going down in that country. Do you know what I mean? So people aren't really getting up to mischief after school. People are staying, like, we'll have study hall and then we'll have training.
Yeah.
And I played sports all year round: volleyball, track and field, basketball, soccer, you name it, swimming. I just did it because I needed, like, movement is therapy for me. Movement helps me, like, release my brain from, like, all my thoughts and just to forget everything and to just feel sort of like some sort of freedom and achievement through, like, motion and like strategy is, like, dope.
Yeah.
And there's part of the reason why I actually stayed a few months after I'd graduated, and I sort of illegally coached the junior varsity volleyball team, which my little brother was in. We actually won because we just transitioned to this harder, like, schools pool that we played sports against different schools. So for example, I was from Oman, there'd be one in Abu Dhabi, there'd be one in Dubai, there'd be one in Egypt, whatever, and we would just mix it around. So I stayed on and I coached my little brother, and the athletic director paid me under the table.
Fantastic.
You know about it. But we won that tournament, and it's the only, I don't know about till this date, but for like 5 years it was the only thing we won in that new school.
Like, your school wasn't good at sport.
Half a decade we didn't win anything, and like the 3 months I stayed on, we won that volleyball tournament, and it was like.
What do you think that was?
It was
just a dedicated coach?
It wasn't a dedicated coach. I think it was the kids. I'm going to call them kids because they were kids at the time. They're grown men now. I mean, they're bigger than me.
Yeah.
I want to fight them. But they were kids at the time, and the kids sort of saw me come up, if that makes sense. Like,
you were at school at the same time as them.
Yeah, I was at school
totally.
at the same time.
Yeah, you get a mad different respect at that point.
They saw what they could achieve, and we were at, like, me and, like, my grades, it was uncommon for us to lose in tournaments. Like, we won more than we lost.
Okay.
So they saw what that looked like, and no offense to some of these older teachers and stuff, but, you know, like, coaching and understanding strategy and understanding, like, kids, and I was a kid back then too, is different. They're all skills that you acquire. I acquired them by doing them, and they were too far removed. So I think part of the reason was, like, I could be like, you know what I can do? I could smash all of you right now in this game, but I'm going to tell you how to, like, play it so that you can win, kind of thing.
Nice.
I think that's all it was.
So something that I really want to, like, try and understand is from you, once you've moved to Australia, why you ended up staying on board. You know, like, how do you sort of find your path, or how have you found what you deem to be your path a little bit? And I'll just provide a bit of context for that, because typically the experience for someone our age was school in the exact same area, graduate, university, job, and so forth, and you, like, continue the progression, and maybe you get a chance to go abroad, and you have a lot of great experiences and influential people along the way. But the reason I really want to interview you is because you just have had such an unconventional path to here. So after moving into Sydney, like, how did you find a purpose, or is it still something you're really looking for? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. If to answer the end part of that question is, I'm always looking. I have a general direction, but I'm always looking. And anyone that tells you that, you know, that they found their path and, like, they know exactly what they want to do for the next decade is, like, you have to respect it. Like, there's so much has to go on before you can build yourself up to that point. And I have a general direction. As you said, I'm very unconventional. But for a lot of the time, like, I don't get to decide. Like, life decides. Like, I decide where I put myself, and then life decides what happens to me, and then I decide how I respond to it. I get to choose what general direction I'm heading, but the path I've taken, you can't script that, dude.
Yeah.
You can't script it.
How
wish it on no one.
In the last 7 years, how many times have you thought about sort of just leaving and starting again somewhere else?
Every couple of months.
Yeah, and why did you never pull the trigger?
I don't know, there's a lot. I think it comes back to just responsibility. I don't know, that kind of sucks too.
Are you responsible to anyone else except yourself here in Sydney?
I'm not, but, like, I'm always responsible for my family, you know what I mean? Like, it's important that if anything happens, I have the means to help out people that I care about. That's important.
Is that financially or is it more emotionally? Really, everything.
Emotionally, whatever. Like, if any of my family got sick, I would leave Sydney immediately.
Yeah.
I would go and help them.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just the way it has to be. So like, I've got to provide for myself, but I feel the responsibility for like people that are around me. Not only my family, but I feel a responsibility for like anyone that's like around me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The responsibility I feel when I think about like similarly just taking off again, leaving everything behind. There's like a responsibility to my parents specifically that you're not gonna go off and sort of waste time and not make something of yourself. You know, these like ideas of what a successful move forward is from society, which our parents, or at least my parents, like adopt to the full. You know, the notion of taking a risk and moving to a new country, or taking a risk and starting a new business, is just totally not accepted. And so I have this really tough like wrestle with, do I just want to let my parents down by disrespecting the responsibility I have to them to fulfill their time spent on me, you know?
Here's where I had a crazy revelation that's gonna sort of answer what you just said.
Okay.
I don't know if you agree with it, but it's something that I remember when I first said out loud to myself. I was like, fuck, true. Don't know if I swear this podcast, but it is what it is.
You can.
So we have huge responsibility to our parents. Like, I always think about how could I ever repay my dad? How could I ever do that? How could I ever? And it's impossible to. It's impossible to. And that's another tangent. It's impossible to. But so when we're trying to decide as a young adult, as a teenager, whatever, what we're trying to do, we take in what society and our parents and people that we respect is important to us, and then we try to make the appropriate move that everyone around us to be like, oh yeah, that was. It
like filters through you, but it's not totally you.
That was the correct move. So I did my Bachelor of Science. So after high school, I took 6 months off, came to uni. After I graduated uni, I took 6 months off before I started my master's. I actually started a Doctor of Physiotherapy at Macquarie Uni. And I did a year of that, and I enjoyed it, but I started to see, after I was doing some shadows and some stuff where I got to go into the field, that would I be able to do this? Yes. Would I want to see myself doing it forever? No. And so I thought about it, and I was like, I'm going to take another year off. And whatever you think, times up by 100 because you got Asian parents.
So your dad the whole time's like, Jono, fucking stay there.
My dad, he'll never say that outrightly, but everyone has parents, everyone knows that.
Right, okay.
But we have, we can't forget that how we live is ever changing, and how we live should not be the way our parents lived. Our parents went through a lot, our parents lived in a different time. My parents went through a lot to get to where they were. But they did all that to get to where they are today, to provide for you, to give you a chance to look for what you want to do, not what they want to do. That's what I realized. After I did my year, I took a year off. I did an internship at Messina. And I was just figuring out if I could work creatively, because I'd always been passionate about creative stuff.
Yeah.
But I'd always studied science stuff, and I love both. But I think I just enjoyed the process of learning, which is what kept me going more than what I was learning or what the end result was.
Yeah.
So when I finally came to the realization that my old man didn't work so hard for me to do what he wants. My dad worked so hard so that he could provide me with the opportunity to do what I want.
That is a great revelation, and logically makes sense. And it's almost certainly true. That's the other thing. You can say that it's true and admit that it's true, but there is still just, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And it might just be total a narcissistic way to look at it. It might not even have anything to do with your parents. It's just yourself. You want to be responsible. You want to be successful by your own standards.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that was a very significant realization for me. Is it's just crazy that we think about, oh, what would this person think of me? What would this person think of me? What would that person think of me? If I die tomorrow, I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah.
And I hope that I can. And not everyone has that privilege. But if you do, you sure as hell shouldn't try and please someone else to do something.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more when it comes to pleasing other people. 100%. But there is, at least, and for all, but especially for me, there's just another, your parents aren't just other people. But you know, like the notion of no one is thinking about you as much as you're thinking about you, and despite the things you might do that are just totally disagreeable by everyone else's standards, they'll forget about it very quickly because they're going to start thinking about themselves again. And that's an easy way for me to rationalize my decisions to the broader public. But the one exception might be your parents. They might think about you more than they do themselves, you know? And so it's just an interesting thread to pull, which I think we can, you know, I can see a lot of, I think at least, I see a lot of like my own thoughts and concerns in people like yourself, much more than I do with my more contemporary peers, the blokes I went to high school, you know, the guys I was hanging out with before I came here. Like the same concerns I don't think apply as much there. And so it's interesting to be able to talk to someone who thinks similarly. But so you did another gap year and you did the internship in Messina. Have you spoken to your father about this? Like, do you know that do you feel like he's confident in your path and you're not worried that he's thinking you're making a mistake?
I'm confident.
That's great.
Confident. I think it comes just from my track record. Like, and this is the same for everyone. Like when we're most susceptible to pain or agony or feelings of failure is when we go and put ourselves in positions where we can be compromised, right? So me being who I am and just being like, oh, I know there's going to be problems, but I just don't care about them because I know I'm just going to be able to, like, time will heal everything. Who knows what will happen to me, but I'm sure that if I set my mind to it, I will do it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just the way I was brought up, the things that I've been through. That's like, my dad's seen it over and over again. So he doesn't even ask me anymore. I'm just like, I'm going to move to Byron at the end of the year.
That's fantastic.
It's like, do you know, like, you know what you have to do to get there? I'm like, yeah. Are you comfortable, money, like, whatever, like, you're good? Yeah. Okay. Well, what have you been up to? That's it. Like,
do you speak to him often?
I speak to him like at least twice a week.
Yeah, lovely. Text or you call as well?
Call. Yeah, I don't text him that much.
And where's he live at the moment?
He's living in Muscat, in Oman.
He's still in Oman? Okay.
Yeah. He's one of the lucky few. Going to have his contract renewed as well.
Where do you think he'll move to Australia or back to Singapore?
He would never. If I was him, I would never.
Yeah?
I told him.
He was living it up in Oman?
Dude, you live a different lifestyle there. Okay, so think about how many days of leave you get in Australia. It's like 25 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
There he gets like close to 65 days of leave.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What the hell?
He works from 8 till 2.
Yeah.
One time he called me, he was like, oh, such a busy day. I work from 9 to 5. I was like, damn. That's what everyone does.
Take it
everywhere.
easy.
That's what everyone does everywhere. And he was just like, you couldn't fathom it. And like, so he answers to one person who's like, it's the chancellor of this company. And he's an advisor. So he does not have to answer. He's like me. I don't want to answer to like too many people. Like, I want a job, I can do it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so he asks the one person, and then that's all. He's happy. Like,
fantastic.
You have no income tax out there.
Zero.
Holy
hell.
So I don't see why he would move. If they can, I was like to my dad, and my dad's someone that needs to be active. Also, because like all his kids are everywhere else. Like, if he can work till I think he can work till he's 70. Honestly, his brain needs to go. If he stopped working, I don't know what would happen to him.
Yeah, just fall into a pit of depression.
No, like, I don't know. Like, I think he'd be happy, but like, he gets a lot of fulfillment from work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice. And so, about 16 months ago, you went through a major accident, which I haven't actually heard about. So it'd be great to hear about it. But before we go into it, where were you before this accident happened in your life?
In life, or just like what was I doing?
In life.
In life, it's hard to say. Like, I'm generally
like major girlfriends, work opportunities, big decisions you had to make, crossroads.
It's hard to contextualize because in that period, that's all that happened because it just consumed me.
Yeah. Okay.
It just consumed me. I don't remember what was I remember the day. I don't remember anything that happened like 2 weeks before, a month before, 2 months before. I don't remember it.
Because of the brain injury?
Not because of it. Okay. It's just like how much can...
Your brain filtered it all away.
Yeah,
it didn't need to remember. Yep.
Yeah, how much can you hold? And I'm generally pretty happy. I'm like, as I told you, like I make decisions based on what I think is going to be the best for me, and like if I'm going to have fun doing it.
Yeah.
And maybe that's bad, and maybe that's not, but that's how I do it. It's important for me to have fun. It's important for me to enjoy what I'm doing. If I'm not enjoying it, I'm not going to do it. It's just what it is.
So it happened in February.
Happened in February.
And just take us through the day leading up to the accident.
So actually it was a Friday, and I was trying to get a pre-work surf in. I wasn't trying to. I did get a pre-work surf in. Wasn't successful.
Where?
It was at Queenscliff. Up in Manly.
Oh, North Shore.
North Shore.
Fuck, you get around, man.
Yeah, so I went with my workmate Tim and one of my friends Simona.
Yeah.
It's just crazy, man. It's just crazy. So I had actually bought this. I bought this foamy with me, like a 6'5" foamy. So it's like I've surfed, but I'm not like I'm comfortable with like board sports, but like I didn't grow up in the surf, so like I'm still trying to learn. So I was like, I'm gonna get in this foamy, figure it out, and then I can upgrade when I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So Simona's boyfriend Bev actually shapes boards, and made her a board for her birthday. Sim was riding another board, a big mini mount, and I was just gonna ride this. We were ready to go. She saw my phone and she's like, "What are you using that for?" I was like, "Oh, I'm cool. Like my friend let me borrow this. Like this is what it is." And she's like, "Oh no, Jake just shaped me this board. You're gonna love it. I'll just make it up for you now." I was like, "Nah, it's all good." She's like, "No, you gotta use this." Big old single fin on it, beautiful board. She sold it straight after this day. She couldn't look at it again for obvious reasons. I'll digress in a second. But yeah, so then she made the board and I was like, "Oh, you really need to do that?" She did it. I was like, "Okay, cool, you did it. Let's go out." Had a really good session actually. Had a really good like surf session. It wasn't massive. It was maybe like 2, 3, maybe 4 foot max. It wasn't huge.
Not many people out there.
There's a few people out there, but like not crazy. It was just a bit messy. It wasn't clean. Like it wasn't a picturesque like surf day.
Yeah.
You could still get waves, but it wasn't like that. Of course, it was the last wave. Sim actually had already gone in. Me and Tim were sitting out. They were like, "Let's catch one last wave." So the set comes through, and me and Tim both see it. So I start paddling. We both get up on it. He's going right on it. I'm going left on it. And I look. Someone else has like just dropped in on me. So I surfed it a little bit, and I was like, "Alright, whatever. I'll duck out and I'll grab one more." So I kind of dived into the wave. I got tossed around more than I thought I would because I thought I was like pretty comfortable just like ducking straight to the wave. And then when I resurfaced, I just knew something was wrong. It's hard to describe what I felt, but I just knew immediately that something was like wrong. I just didn't know what it was. I was like, "Oh, I just felt something touch my face. Maybe like it was this piece of seaweed slapped me in the face or something." So I touched my face and my finger went into my face. And I was like, I just remember this was the first thought I had. If I don't get out of the water, I'm gonna die. That was like, it was that level of urgency, and like, so I just started.
Fucking miracle you weren't knocked out.
I should have been knocked out.
Yeah.
Like, because so what had happened was the surfboard had cracked me in the face.
Your own board.
My own board. And you
Just in the tumble.
in the wash. You can still see my face. This is where the surfboard hit me.
Okay.
Yeah. You can see these bumps on my skull.
Can I touch it?
Touch it.
Or is it?
So what had happened was
point end?
No. So what had happened was the surfboard fin had cracked me right between my eye and my nose, right here. And
Plastic fin?
I think it was a plastic fin.
And it's caused this much damage.
It cracked me. It cracked through my skull and stabbed me in the brain.
Holy fuck.
So think about if I stab you in the brain right now. Are you gonna live?
Yeah, but I mean, no.
You're gonna die.
Yeah.
You're gonna die.
You can't have brain injuries.
I should have been knocked out cold and I should be gone.
Do you know is there any non-miracle explanation for why you weren't knocked out?
It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. Like, it's weird to say that this was a good outcome. Like I lost my left vision from it, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff. But like for the most part, I had my wits about me. I can move around. Like, I just remember being in the water and I was there, but I wasn't there. Like, you could have done anything to me, right? You could have sliced my leg off. It wouldn't have mattered. I wouldn't have known. I was just
no pain at this point.
No pain at all.
And you've resurfaced and gone to touch your face, and it's just gone in, and you've brought bloody fingers back out.
And then I started yelling. I just started screaming for help, help, as loud as I could. This French guy swims over to me, sees me, says one word, says "fuck," and from that moment, I I couldn't even register what was going on. I just heard his voice. I just knew he was close to me, and he couldn't say anything. He just said, "Fuck." And I was like, okay, that means I'm in serious grief here.
Yeah.
So then, what I remember and what happened kind of differs differently because I've talked with like my mate about it since then. But essentially, I obviously just start swimming. I just like try to swim as close as I can to the shore. So I'm still getting tossed around, and I'm still tied to my board. So my board is fanging around. They finally get a hold of me, and I was like already had swum kind of halfway through, put me on the board, and kind of like push me into the shore. I bank up on the sand, unstrap myself from the leash, and just walk as far up into the beach as I could. I had in me, and I just collapsed into the sand. So then. Yeah, so
the ambulance is called.
It would have been ambulance was called. They took way longer than you'd want them to, probably like 40 minutes.
What?
Why? Basically, people put my wetsuit off me. They put a towel on my face. They were just trying to keep me like lucid. Luckily, I was there. Like I don't know what it was, but I can say for sure that I chose not to die.
Yeah, really. That's amazing. You've still maintained consciousness.
I'm awake this whole time. The only time that I got put out was when I was in the hospital and they took my hand to like sign a waiver to just knock me out. But I can distinctively, this is when we get to the whole like it was a miracle thing. Like I can't explain why I was alive. I can't explain it. I can't explain why I was conscious. Maybe why I'm alive is a different thing. I can't explain why I was conscious there.
All medical explanations would say that you should have been unconscious.
Let's put it this way: if I grab anything and stab you in the brain, what's going to happen? You should be out like a light.
Yeah.
Nothing should happen. But I just went into this. A state of panic, or I was 100% adrenaline, and I felt like no one could do anything to me. And I was just like, I was just like, get in or you die. Yeah. So I just chose to get in.
The fin cut through your bone.
The fin cut through my bone and then my brain.
And how deep into your brain did it get?
Do you want to see it?
Sure. Do you know?
Yeah, I know. I've got a photo of it.
And this. So I'm touching my face. So from your nose up around your right eye socket.
A few more centimeters and I'd be a vegetable. Yeah, it's not great. Like that's why I say like.
Is it all the way to that white spot there?
Yeah, so that's bleeding, but up until the grey for sure on that level of my brain is where it definitely spiked me.
So this is.
It's probably about
a centimeter or two.
About 2 centimeters into my prefrontal cortex.
Oh my god, man! It's unbelievable.
It didn't sever my optic nerve, but it traumatized it enough.
Okay.
To a point where it's not going to work again.
And that's your left vision.
Left vision's gone. So
okay.
Monocular. Yeah, the whole thing.
Is that your real eye?
Yes, my real eye.
Okay. So it stayed in place.
Everything stayed there. They just tried obviously it was I think it was 11 hours of surgery.
Surgery straight away.
This is a bad surgery, dude. This is like seawater got into my brain cavity.
Oh my god, that's true.
Sand was all around, blood. Like my eye was cooked, my brain was literally stabbed, my skull was shattered.
Yeah.
Like this is a bad surgery. Like this is like we don't know if we can make this good.
There was legit stress that you might not make it through.
I got a photo of my face when I was in the ER too.
Yeah, no, I'm a bit squeamish.
Yeah, I'm squeamish. I'm not squeamish, and I saw that I almost passed out. I had to delete it. I sent it to my sister.
Wow.
I went on my phone.
Dude. Okay, so the ambulance has picked you up. You've been taken to the hospital. You've signed away the waiver, and you're undergoing immediate surgery.
I don't remember. As soon as I just remember going to the hospital. I don't remember anything.
And they just put out the gas.
Until I woke up and my sisters were next.
And you woke up 11 hours later.
Longer than that.
Longer than that. Okay. How long were you out for?
I think it was in the end. It was 18, something like that.
18 hours.
Something like that.
Oh, yes.
Because you go in and they don't know what's going on, so they're going to clean you up while my face is literally hanging off. It looked like someone swung an axe at my face.
Yeah.
Go for scans, try to figure out what's going on, where's the bleeding, how are we going to fix this, and then get enough because no normal surgeon can do this. Like my brain was cooked. I had opthal, I had plastics, I had neuro. So the head honchos in a sense had to come in. I don't know if they were working or not, but it was important enough where everyone was like, okay, we're gonna have to come.
And they saved your life.
They saved my life. Yeah, there's no way.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. It's unbelievable. And apart from the vision, is there other physical effects that are ongoing from this injury?
No.
because that's also unbelievable.
Yeah, they said if you're gonna get stabbed in the brain anyway, besides her losing eyesight thing, which sucks, but you can adapt to it. Like your body's pretty resilient. That's where you're gonna get stabbed. If I got stabbed in the back of my head, done. Side, 100% vegetable if not done. Front, that's the only way, because like the brain stem and the cerebellum at the back controls like all your a lot of your balance, your proprioception, really just understanding of like what's going on. And then you have your middle, which is like your sensory and your motor. So that's why I say like a few more centimeters, it wouldn't have mattered. Done. So.
And that accident as well. I mean, because I surf, right? I've had plenty of tumbles. I've even been hit with a board, but obviously to no effect. That's like, I'm just trying to think. There must have been a forceful wave, or this was a particularly sharp fin, because you've come off the board, which means you've gone into the water, and then the waves push the board. But like, the force alone.
Yeah, if I knew what happened, I'd tell you. But
it's a freak
accident.
I'm sure no one has ever heard of that happening that you've spoken to.
I hope they never do.
Yeah.
I hope they never do.
So, something we spoke about on the car ride over, and you alluded to just then, like you almost willed yourself alive through staying conscious. There was a spirituality aspect to that as well, and it tied at least a little bit to your relation with your mother. Do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah. Actually, it's a really, really funny story because I don't know. I actually think about what I do a lot. I think that's maybe why I'm like quite reserved too, because I'm just always thinking. I'm trying to I'm always trying to understand like what I am, and I'm usually just a piece of shit. Just trying to find a direction in which I can do some cool things, but also enjoy it. So then I was thinking. I talked to my dad, and my sister. My older sister remembers more about my mum than I do. Obviously, she had an extra year, and my little brothers probably don't even remember my mum at all, which is kind of sad. But I remember, and this is going to be pretty dark. Well, I actually watched my mum die. Okay. But I'm glad I didn't actually, and that sounds fucked up too.
You were with her in the hospital at the end.
Yeah, I was with her in the hospital, but my mum was strong. This is what I think helped me live, right? So my mum got diagnosed with lung cancer, right? And she was always happy, really strong, and she was like very positive at the start, but it became apparent to her, a couple months in that, there's a time limit to this. And yeah, it's kind of weird because how do you live knowing that you're gonna die, and two, what are the steps that you want to take before the moment comes? So I remember I was in primary school, so I would go in a lot. I would go in, every day really, just to see my mum, and we just do random stuff. I didn't know what was happening. Maybe when was sick, I didn't know she was going to die. She knew she was going to die. So at one stage, I think she realized it was coming soon, and she told my dad, she was like, "I don't care whatever happens. Make sure call her closest siblings, call my mum and dad. Yeah, I need them. I want them here." My dad was like, "Whatever." Bought a ticket. And they all came together actually. And so one day I remember all of us got pulled from school, and it was the day actually that my mum's parents were coming. So we went to the hospital. Don't think anything's up, but my mum knows. She knows she's going, but she's holding on. This is the most fucked up thing to think about, because it's weird to think about your parents as humans, or as I guess my hero. Both of my parents are heroes of mine, but my mum, she knew she was going. As soon as everyone got there, we got there first, and then her parents got there. As soon as everyone arrived, she left.
Wow.
Think about that.
Yeah. That's her willing herself along for people to be there.
I know that for fact. That happened. So that always fucks me up. So I think she was there with me, because I don't know what happened. And I should be gone. I should be gone. And that would have been terrible for everyone I know.
It would have been an absolute tragedy.
It would have been a tragedy, but I don't know. I just know that I chose to live. I don't know how I know. I just know that I chose to live.
Yeah.
And she chose to live, and she chose when to go, and she went only at the point where she realized that everyone was there and she was at peace.
Yeah.
That's
Dude,
fucked.
it's fucked. It's amazing. Like, do you think that you can explain it physically? Like, there was just the stress she put her body under to stay conscious was real, or like you alluded to, do you think there's a spiritual aspect to it?
It's hard to say because like we were talking about, I grew up religiously and I grew up around different cultures, different religions, so I understand why people get drawn to faith. My old man got drawn to faith after this, like really hardcore. Why? I'm trying to fucking figure out why it is that God or the world took away his number one person. How can you figure that out? You have to find something. And sometimes the community or the faith, and like you can say whatever you want about churches, or if you're like, what's the word? You're not religious. You can say whatever you want. But one thing that's always certain is that like the community within those churches are always trying to help and always trying to do good. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes there's stuff happening in the back. But on the front, like I guess like at the front, everyone that's going to the church wants to do good. So I understand spirituality. Like I'm not very religious myself, but when I think about all the other things that have happened in my life, like I've also snapped my arm in half. I think my body knows how to react when it's in danger. I don't like it's all reflex, it's all reactionary, but my body knows what to do. My body knows what to do to like make sure it's okay.
Yeah.
And when you learn in school about the fight or flight response, I wonder what mine is. I know for sure 100% that every part of me wants to fight. Yeah. I know 100%.
But that's really brilliant. I think similarly as well. I haven't been physically threatened too much, but when I have been physically threatened, whether it's an external force or just myself getting myself in danger, I actually feel really like proud of this. I'm thinking of two specific scenarios of the reaction I had, which isn't a conscious reaction. It's just like you just fucking do it. Like when I was young, like I don't know, 15 or something, there was these giant guys who were trying to roll my mate, and I just like went and like pushed him, and was like fuck off. And then somehow it diffused, right? But then reflecting on that at another moment, I just like it's not something likely that I would willingly do, because you expose yourself to a crazy amount of danger. It's like give them the wallet or whatever. But tell me more about, because I think we can't really move on from this moment yet until there is like more of a reflection on your own spirituality and also how this event has changed your outlook on life, which you also sort of alluded to in the car.
Yeah. When you asked me if it had changed my life, like my gut reflexes is telling no. Okay, so this is actually really funny. When I woke up at the hospital bed, guess what the first three things that came to my mind were? Just have a go.
Fuck, I don't know. Is the board all right? How are Sim and the other person? And I hope my family's not here.
Yeah. Okay, so those are really good ones. Those are all very reasonable responses.
Yeah.
The first three things I thought about was, I'm never going to be able to take a photo again. I'm not going to be able to drive. I'm not going to be able to work. And I actually thought about that for a very long time. That's an amazing revelation to have for yourself. Yeah. Like you're just filtering through your interests immediately. What matters most. But you know what? Like when I say it out loud, it sounds kind of shit because I'm not thinking about my friends. I'm not thinking about my family and whatever. Right? I had to think about it for a while because I was like, why did I think of those three things? And I think it just stems back to the fact that like I value my autonomy so much. Like, to my own fault sometimes. I do what I want most of the time, if not almost all the time. And that makes me a bit selfish sometimes. It makes me selfish. Yeah, it makes me selfish. If they were the only three qualities you had, it would make you selfish. Yeah.
But just because they're the top 3 doesn't mean everything else isn't for the other people.
Exactly. And so that's what I thought about. Why did I think about those 3 things? And although straight up front they don't portray what I'm thinking, if you look deeper into what those 3 things mean, like I won't be able to drive, I won't be able to work, I won't be able to take photos. The photo thing is obvious. It's something that I've always taken photos, dude. I've always taken photos, I've always taken videos. I've just always done it. And the other 2 things, like I won't be able to drive, I won't be able to work, I was like, why did I think about that? And then it hit me, I was just like, if I can't do those 3 things, I don't have my own autonomy. And if I don't have my own autonomy, if I can't decide what I'm doing without other people's help, it means that I'm just gonna like cause everyone a world of grief. Like my family's gonna have to be here to look after me, or my friends are gonna be, and they want to, and I'm gonna feel bad, but they all want to help me. But if I can't do these 3 things, I can't live my life. So if I can't live my life, that has a knock-on effect to everyone that cares about me, because now they all have to take on extra burdens, which is shit. Like I don't. Yeah, we talked about this as well. Like I don't like feeling like I owe people things, and I don't want people to feel like they owe me things. But I would rather be on the giving than the receiving always. And I remember when this accident happened, I told my dad, I was like, I feel really bad about you guys having to be here. You guys obviously have shit to do. Like, and the recovery took a long time, bro. I didn't process what had happened until 9 months later.
Really?
I knew what had happened, but I hadn't processed it.
Right.
I hadn't sat by myself and just fucking cried.
Yeah.
I just fucking sat by myself, and I just.
What'd you cry about?
It's just a release. It's just a release, dude. Like, again, like it's hard to really comprehend. It's hard to comprehend what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say it quite upfrontly and whatever, but if that happened to you and you're trying to figure out why, what now, who did it affect, what can I do to like repay people that helped me, what can I do? It's just like all these things where you're just like, oh, like it just takes so long. Like I had this tube in my arm basically feeding me antibiotics for 3 months, so I had to be at home for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, someone had to be looking after me that whole time, and then even after that, dude, I still need regular checkups. I signed myself up for like psychiatry appointments. I did like all that kind of shit just because like the physical is one thing, and the physical is terrible. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If I could see out of my left eye again, I would. What else is crazy about that is if you ask me if I remember what looking out of 2 eyes is, I can't. I don't.
Really?
I don't.
Is that because there's such a subtle difference, or just because now it's all you know?
It's all like the body knows how to
find equilibrium.
Yeah, find equilibrium, find a state of homeostasis where it's like, okay, I can function in this fashion. Immediately when I woke up with the operation, I can't remember what it's like to see out of this eye. And like, you say it's quite hard to see because like usually when I walk around, I generally squint my eyes because my left eye is actually a little bit wonky, but if I squint them up a little bit, like, there's not much you can see, so it kind of looks normal. And people say it all the time.
Oh, that's like a vanity thing from you.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a vanity thing for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever will always do it. I might get
that you're just subconsciously doing.
I do it because I know.
Yeah.
And like, like people judge from appearance, even though they don't want to say that they judge from appearance. I think my character, like if you meet me, you think about my character before you think about my appearance, which I like. But if you saw my wonk eye,
you also have so many good facets to your appearance as well. Like you're not just an eye. Like the hair alone, that was the first thing I commented on actually when I saw you.
The hair's just a distraction from the eye. But no. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's hard to figure out. Like when I say it took 9 months, it legitimately took me 9 months to process everything that had happened.
Yeah.
And that sounds crazy to you. It might sound crazy to other people, but that's what happened. Yeah, that's just what happened, man. And I don't know. Like the other crazy thing is like if people ask me would I take it back? If I could go and change that experience, would I? If it was going to happen to my family, what would I do? If it was going to happen to someone I knew, I would do it again. If I could take it back, I wouldn't.
Really?
No.
And how did you come to that conclusion? Because it's pretty bold.
It's bold, but I'm comfortable in saying that.
Yeah.
I don't know. At the end of the day, what is life? What is your life? What is my life? It's just a collection of experiences that I've chosen to take, and no lives are the same. We spend our entire lives trying to fit into this mold, what our parents think, what society thinks, what school thinks that we should do, and I've realized very recently that like we spend this entire time thinking that we want to be like other people, and I just reached this point in my life where I was like, I'm me, and my experiences dictate what I am. I'm not who I am if my mum didn't die, if I didn't move to Oman, if I didn't go through this life-threatening situation. I'm just comfortable in my skin. It doesn't faze me.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's lovely. Well, look, we're about an hour and 15 in, and we've still got a long time till you need to go to dinner. So,
I can't do the piss. Can we pause?
Yeah, definitely. 100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want me to start that thought again?
No, just continue.
Obviously my sisters have both flew in essentially within an 18-hour to 24-hour sort of period, less than a day, and they were in Moscow and Perth respectively. I don't know, like, you can't take that for granted. You can't take that for granted.
The experience brought you closer to your siblings because you're already so close with your dad.
I'm very close with my siblings as well, especially my sisters. Like, me and my older sister used to butt heads when we were younger, you know, like, she used to be the boss lady and I used to be like, I don't care what you say, I'll do whatever.
Yeah.
I guess sort of the same now.
Nice.
But we're adults now, so we can really understand the kind of things we've had to experience.
Aren't even married?
My little sister just got married, actually.
Little sister?
Yeah.
How old is she?
24 going on 5.
Good on her. A young marriage these days.
Young marriage, yeah.
And she's living in Perth.
She's living in Perth.
How about that? To an Australian?
To an Indonesian.
Okay. Is that a cultural thing, like young marriage? Like Asian?
Like, she's more religious than like a lot of us are, so I think like that was a large factor as to why she got married early.
That's interesting. How's the youngest sibling the most religious? Youngest siblings in the generation that's not religious.
She's not she's not my younger sibling. She's like, so it's like my older sister, her, then my 2 little bros.
Okay.
So she's not the youngest, but
okay, right.
to me, she's my little sister. So yeah, I guess she's young.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it could be a number of things really. Like, how often are people like meeting the one, so to speak?
Yeah.
You might come across it now. You might come across it when you're 30.
I mean, speaking of girls, have there been any really influential women in your life?
I would say my older sister is.
I should say girlfriends in your life.
Girlfriend.
Yeah.
I've had girlfriends, but it's another thing that like comes part and parcel with this whole like just moving around a lot. A lot of my relationships were ended because of like distance.
Time to go.
Yeah. And I don't know if that, like, I haven't had a girlfriend in like the last like 3 years.
Wow. Is that just because you haven't met the right women?
I don't know. I'm trying to think about that too.
This is definitely my like anti-Sydney rhetoric bias, but I just don't know if there's that many great chicks in Sydney.
You know what's really funny too though about it, that you should bring that up? I am used to living in a state of just like flux, just like whatever. Like, you could tell me you want to do something this weekend and I'll just say yes because that's how I'm like impulsive. That's how I like to live. I like planning is great, and you know, always plan kids.
Love the variability. 100%.
I'm entirely variable, and in a weird way, like, being comfortable is uncomfortable. If that makes sense to you.
No, it actually really does.
And part of the reason why I want to move is to get a fresh start. No one knows me. No one knows what I do. No one knows what I like. No, whatever. Like, and I hope that a few of my friends want to move up with me because I've talked about it with a few friends. But you know, like, I understand that like living different places, one, opens new opportunities for you, but two, opens new chances for you to like really just experience and learn what happens in other places. And like I said before, like what we do here is so privileged, and we live so comfortably. You don't worry about anything. You lose your job during the pandemic, you get paid. How many people can say that happens to them?
Yeah.
You know
and you'll be re-employed like that when things come back.
And we're so lucky, dude. We're so lucky. And obviously, like, that sort of removes this whole like international move, which I know that I will want to do at some stage in my life, but I also know for sure that like yeah, maybe it's the way I grew up, but you've experienced it too. When you go to somewhere and you experience something new, you realize how valuable removing yourself from your bubble is.
Yeah.
And like we said before again, like the best moments of growth that anyone has in their life is when they're in periods of their life where they're the most compromised or have the most chance to be compromised.
Mm-hmm.
So what's it to you and me to not say, this is great, but when's the last time I chose to challenge myself? Like, that's what I was thinking. I was like, when's the last time I chose to challenge myself? All these things that I talk about, I didn't get to choose. I got to choose my direction, like I said, but life zigzags me. How do I react? So like, if I have a chance to like say that I want to do this and I can do this, why shouldn't I? And that goes to the same for you for like trying to start your business, wanting to move overseas, you know. Your parents are gonna, or people who you care about, whoever, your friends, your parents, whatever, they're gonna be so happy when they realize that you took a leap to do something that you wanted and you did it, because you can, and everyone does it. If you want to put your mind and time to anything, you're going to do it. Like everyone always talks to me about like, oh, like how I chose this career path. Like, you know, what is my career path? Who the hell knows what my career path is? But like, I know for sure that we are so lucky that, you know, our working culture is changing and continues to change. We don't have to work for one company for our whole lives like our
Absolutely not.
grandparents did, and like our parents worked. We don't have to work like that. They've earned the privilege for us to. They have earned the privilege for us to decide what we want to do.
I just want to touch on that thread for a little bit as well. Talking about how the working culture has changed. It's funny you say that. Today I've been writing a blog post about how from COVID-19 forcing everyone home has been like it's been the forced experiment of working from home, and it's going to mark a fundamental shift in how the new generation thinks about work. And yes, we won't work for multiple companies, but even more than that, there's going to be more self-employed people than any other time previously in history. And the more distributed and the more you can outsource things for the cheap that becomes, it's just going to get more and more and more so. So I see for you, like superficially, time will tell, but I see you totally just being an independent creator and manager and whatever else is going to fall under your business umbrella, but it'll be your own brand, which, you know, is something quite exciting to think about, I'm sure.
I hope so. Who knows what will happen.
And just to touch on that thread, I want to ask a number of superficial questions, you know, just like interesting stuff, and then we'll finish off with like an overview of why I like doing these interviews, and then hopefully you can sort of reflect on that as well, and it might mean something to you, because I think something that I still want to get out of you, which hopefully we'll answer in the end, is what your sort of direction for the future is now. And I know you've been saying throughout the entire interview that, you know, like you're more of a go with the flow and have a very low barrier to new experiences, which is fantastic. And so it's extremely hard to know, especially if you don't have an obvious plan. But there is still, and hopefully when I say it, it will ring a bell with you. But before we get there, you're in the business of content creation. You're obviously a very creative guy. What are really influential books or creators that you'd like to rely on? And that can include massive Instagram pages, but
yeah. So books and people. When I was thinking about books, actually, like I remember there was like one book that I read by Malcolm Gladwell, which
Outliers.
Outliers. Yeah, Outliers was one of the first books that I read that I enjoyed the sort of like easy to read flow, but also like learnt that we can control what we can control, but there's so many other factors that contribute to like our successes, and like anyone that tells you that they're a self-made man or like whatever, like don't trust them. If someone tells you they're a self-made man, they did this themselves, boot them to the side. You can't be friends with them, because they have failed to realize fundamental and very important like portions of one is luck, two is mentorship, three is like a great family and great support structure,
timing,
three is timing, money, like you know, like it's really funny because there's this guy, a really smart guy. I hope doesn't listen to this. No, he's got a name anonymous. His parents like work in like security, so like his old man's actually really good. Does like international airport security stuff.
Mhm.
So he travels around and does this. Moved to Fiji, built up this aerial and sort of surveying like drone company. And everyone in my grade always like, oh yeah, like how's Kevin doing? Like, because actually one of my really good friends went to work for him, his parents. Put him on the board of directors, and he's basically been groomed to like lead this. Like his parents built this thing for him to take. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everyone's in the grades like, oh, how's Kevin's company? Like, how's it going? It's not Kevin's company.
No.
Kevin's a smart dude.
It's his birth privilege. That's it.
He's a smart bloke.
Yeah.
And he's a good bloke too.
Yeah.
But like, he didn't build this by himself. He needed so much help, and we all do. And it's very important to realize that, because like, without understanding that, you can't like open yourself up to like collaboration and being like a proper team player, because like it's important now. Again, like we talk about work culture, I think like work culture is kind of shifting, and it's going to play really importantly now in this post-pandemic situation, because a lot of people are now unemployed. In fact, it was like, I don't even know, there was like 75% of people in like our age group in Australia were unemployed during this time. So re-employment after this, though we say it's going to be easy, people are going to be more selective, because in a way we've been like, companies have been able to just cull their company, and now they're going to be able to rebuild it from the bottom up in a lot of cases, and it's not great and whatever, but it's what's going to happen. And I think like in the past, which is why our parents are so big on these university degrees, and if you can get a university degree, you should, but it's not the only way to get a good job nowadays. It's like prerequisites on like, you know, experience in like education that were very, very important. But I think you're going to see a shift in hiring move towards a more of like a cultural fit. Yes, they're going to want you to have like this baseline level. I think it's going to drop that baseline level of like education or experience. I think that's going to drop, because I think people are going to start to realize that like essentially what you're trying to do in a company is create like a group or a tribe of people that are going to come together that see this like vision, that like we're trying to achieve this vision, right? If you're just hiring people that like, oh, can he make these like beautiful Word documents and Excel documents and these graphs, and like, can he, you know, take a photo and edit it and whatever, but he's got his own interests, or she's got his own interests, and they're doing this as money for a career, but they're not invested in your idea or your company's concept. If you strip everything back, that is the most important thing in a company, is that everyone in the company sees what the dedicated communal goal is, and are actively working. And that's why you see like, even like during this pandemic, or even if you're on your day off or on a weekend, people that enjoy what they're doing think about work.
Yeah, and that's extremely rare in much of the larger case companies. It sounds like you have that here at We Are Explorers, which is fantastic. But for that exact reason, the fact that like that skin in the game, where the people who are in it, and then there are people that do it for the money. Those that just do it for the money, they're going to find their own thing in this new next generation workforce, and figure out what they have skin in the game for, and be able to project themselves, whether it's just a solo man operation into that whole field. But so Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. That had a big impact on you.
Yeah, it kind of just like brought to light the fact that basically what it does is break down these people. You might know them, you might not know them. People that have been successful in business ventures or in personal ventures, but mostly business ventures, and telling their story in a very like fairy tale-esque way. Once upon a time, it was Bill Gates, and what did he do? He had parents that were in the like university game and in the computing industry. Then he found his way into this, the first, you know, sort of like, so his high school, I believe, got heaps of funding for these like new computers, which were really shit, but were really new at the time. That like
It was one of the only schools in Seattle that had them,
and like had this processing power where he could understand how to like, you know, understand coding and like programming is like electronic stuff. And then he eventually found his way to another university where basically you had to pay for time on these computers so that you could you know, use them and do your work. But then he found a back like he hacked. I didn't know if he hacked the system, but he found like a back hole where he could just use it like unlimitedly like between the hours of like midnight or like 7 a.m. or whatever, they said you could just use it, but during the day you had to like book it and pay for it. So he would just sit there every night, go in by himself, go out, go in by himself, and he was like geographically placed. Family was perfectly placed for him to work well, and just loved it. And I think like there are so many factors that like contribute to why you're gonna do what you're gonna do, and like finding your purpose or like your direction in life is not easy. It's not easy, and it's not gonna just pop up. You're working for it always. You're working for it, and like what you see as your goal now will change in 3 months. Will change in 6 months. And that will change again in 3 months. So
it's going to take a lot of, for most individuals, it's going to take a lot of trial and error to figure out what you actually really want to do.
yeah,
And that is a major differentiator between our generation and our parents, because they didn't have the privilege of being able to say, you know what, I don't love this, but and I want to try something else. They were like, I don't love this, but it pays the bills, so I'm going to stay at it. Yeah, like
yeah, it depends on your responsibility. It depends on your level of responsibility too. You know, like for me, like for my old man, like he's got to look after 5 kids by himself. So like what he knows that he's been doing, he's not going to change that because he's got people relying on him.
Yeah.
So you don't have that opportunity to do that. But like by being us and living in this sort of like ever changing sort of world and understanding how, or trying to understand how business works, trying to project ourselves into the future as careers project themselves into the future as well. Like for example, I told you my little brother is studying a bachelor's of artificial intelligence.
It's fascinating.
Try to tell your parents
in the Netherlands.
Try to tell your grandparents that. They'll look at you and like, I try to tell my dad, like, I'm a social media manager, I'm a creator. He doesn't know what that means.
Yeah.
He tries, but he doesn't know what that means.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just a different world, and it will change, and it will continue to change. And so my job didn't exist 10 years ago, and it might not exist 10 years from now. So who am I to, like, I can't project myself that far into the future knowing that. You know?
A great, because I've a lot of the guilt that we spoke about earlier to the parents feeling responsible that you need to fulfill their wishes. A lot of the guilt comes from the fact that I've tried so many things, and I really have tried a lot of different things. And I listened to this podcast interviewing this guy. He did a biography in Roger Federer, so it was nothing to do with what the message I took away from it was, but there was an interchange, and the host said, Russ Roberts, it's called Econ Talk, the host said, some people are extremely lucky to find exactly what they were built for the very first time. Tiger Woods, Roger Federer, Cristiano Ronaldo. It's easy to say for sports. And just because a lot of the rest of us don't find it the first time, it has nothing to do with your virtues as an individual or your potential. You just quite literally weren't as lucky as the other guys. And I found that so reassuring, because I've always thought like maybe I'm just not as good as I need to be this exceptional person. When in fact it's just you haven't found what you need yet, because you need more trial and error.
And you know what? The sports analogy is a really good analogy. Like, not currently, but like a few months ago, I was really into Mike Tyson. So I think Mike Tyson's a very interesting individual and kind of like portrays how crazy life can be. You know what I mean? Like he's just a ghetto kid his family's non-existent. He's not going to school, like all this stuff, and he's just robbing people. He's just committing crimes, doing whatever. And then he goes to jail and he meets Custamato, was basically his coach for the like portion of like when he was learning to box. Like he fought like I think he boxed with Cuss in jail, and Cuss like shredded him, and he was like, outside I'm the baddest man, and like in this boxing ring, this like older white dude just like
no way, is that a fact? That's so cool.
So he was like, okay, I don't care what you say, like just please teach me like how to do what you just did to me. And so Cuss basically literally adopted him, taught him all this stuff. But Cuss was a bit of a madman too, you know. He did weird shit, like he would try to hypnotize him and like all this stuff.
Yeah.
But basically built Mike from like this like hood, like
just gangster
to like, okay, you like he literally when he first within the first couple of weeks when he met him was like, I know that you are going to be the youngest
heavyweight of all time
champion in the world.
Yeah.
I'm going to make you that. You know what I mean? Like these are like the mentors, or these are like the like inputs that people need from older people. Like I don't know, like there's a lot of industries where people aren't ready to share that, but like literally Mike Tyson was 0. Cus said, I'm going to make you the youngest heavyweight champion of the world. And just before Mike became the youngest heavyweight champion of the world, Cus passed away.
Really?
And so when Cus passed away and Mike became the heavyweight champion of the world, he was like, I don't really know why I did this. Cus isn't here. I don't have any family. All my friends, I don't know. And he would literally just, after he'd win like boxing titles, he would just go back into the hood and just rob people because that was
That's
his,
so
that
crazy.
was his zero. That was
I
where
didn't know that.
Yeah, and then he got absolutely manipulated by his new managers and future partners, and he went to jail multiple times for things that he didn't do. You know,
Yeah.
like he got accused of domestic violence from this woman and so clearly manipulated him. And then his lawyers were like, okay, we just need you to apologize to her. Don't have to say you did it, just apologize to her. And Mike was like, I'm not going to apologize to her because I didn't do it and spent more time in jail for doing that. Like they were like, we'll let you out now if you just apologize to me. He's like, I cannot apologize.
That's amazing.
And so he was like the king of the world, and then, you know, after a while your athletic ability kind of like depletes, and then he was no one, and he just went through this like crazy sort of like metamorphosis, and he's like actually a super deep philosopher now. Like if you listen to Mike Tyson speak, look at his face, he's got that tattoo on it, he's talking with a lisp, and you're like, this dude doesn't know anything, but this guy knows what it is to be 0 to literally being like, if I tell you to do something, there's no way you can tell me otherwise. If not, I will literally murder you where you stand.
Yeah.
So do it now.
Yeah.
You know, he knows what that is, and he's
Yeah.
just found this like fucking perfect like Zen middle where he's like, now today he's just like, I don't know who I was when I was a boxer. That was just everything just happening so fast. I just thought that I could do everything, I could buy anything, I could have anything I want, and people just gave it to me because I could literally just destroy them. And now I'm just like trying to find like my purpose past that. He's like, that's a past life. I don't really know what that was. I don't really know what that was. It just happened to me. It happened so fast, and now I'm this. But it speaks so clearly to like finding something that you were built to do young, you know, like that had to happen to him when he was like 15, 14 for him to be the youngest heavyweight champion at like, I think it was 19 or something like that.
Yeah.
But, like if he didn't have that,
Was he that
who
young?
would he be?
Fucking hell.
You know, who would like training, you know?
Yeah.
Who would he be? He might just be dead.
Yeah. No, you just never would have heard of him.
He'd probably be dead.
The mentorship aspect so much,
It's
man.
important, dude.
I actively seek out mentors. There's a guy I worked with in Amsterdam called Davis Cutter who is a mentor, but not close, you know. Do you have anyone apart from family, of course?
Yeah, I would say like obviously I look up to my boss. Like
The man who runs this company.
runs Real Spurs, Henry Biden, big old bald head English fella,
Nice.
good bloke. Yeah, Henry, if you're listening. Yeah, he gets it. He gets it. I don't know. There's some people you meet in your life, you get it, or you just like either they get it or they get me, and allow me to do what I need to do. If that makes sense. Like I guess that's what my dad has done. I guess that's what like teachers or my coaches have done. They're just like, okay, I know who Jono is. How do I like make him better?
But you just came across your boss, right?
Well,
Have you seeked out people that influence you that you're inspired by?
No, I've never really done that. Maybe I should. But it, like speaking about people as well, like you know, like photographers or people that live in this sort of like social media community, like often have people they look up to. Or whatever. I don't look up to any famous people. I really don't follow any famous people. I follow my friends, people that I've met, people I have actual interactions with, people that I've met through my work life or my personal life, people I've met through my family. I don't follow big people. I don't care what they do, honestly. Like sometimes
Even Jimmy Chin.
No,
Isn't he the OG for everyone in the creative community?
Jimmy's great, but I don't like his face, so I can't follow him. But you know, like people do spectacular things, and it'd be bad if I didn't. Okay, let me put it this way: I don't follow them, but I'm interested in what they do. Like I read about people that I feel like I look up to, or somebody that's lived a different life and can provide me with a different perspective. I'll read books, I'll read articles, whatever. But I don't follow people for vanity. I don't follow people for like to know what they do, so I can talk to other people who know what they do. Like I'm focused on like me and my area.
Cool. Well, look, that answers that. Tell me, what's the most surprising cuisine you ever came across?
The most surprising cuisine I ever came across. This is good. I don't know, like I really love food. I think you might know that.
And you've also seen a lot of the world, so you can comment on different cuisines.
I ate a lot of food. What's the most interesting cuisine?
Surprising,
like a dish or like as a whole?
For instance, I went to Albania, knew nothing about their food culture and was blown away by how good it is.
Okay. Obviously I'm Asian, so like I love Asian food, and Asian people eat weird stuff.
Yeah.
Weird stuff. Obviously, you know, like the shark fins or the like stuff like that.
Something
Something
the bat suit.
that really surprised me. I've eaten a lot of weird stuff, so I don't know if I can like pinpoint anything. Like I've eaten camel, I've eaten jellyfish.
It doesn't have to be weird. It's like such an enjoyable, surprising experience.
Enjoyable, surprising experiences in food. I always enjoy food that is like a little bit like rustic. I don't know if this is what you're asking, but I know what my favorite restaurant in the world is, and it's a Turkish restaurant.
In Australia?
No, it's in Oman.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. And they serve like just incredible stuff. They do like, so like you order like a plate of like dips for the table, like hummus, a tzatziki, whatever. It's got the olives and chili, whatever.
Oh,
and
fuck, it sounds so good.
And they just fire bread the whole day. They just fire this long bread that like if you buy anything, you get unlimited bread. So if you buy like a dip plate, you just ask for bread.
Bread's coming all day.
Like, you finish it, wave them over, get another one. And they do like fresh fish on the grill or the broil. Like they do like all this stuff, and it's just like it's crazy. But like I think the thing that I like most about food is like the sharing aspect. Like I don't get around like I get around it, but you know, like you go for an a la carte, like I eat this, you eat that. I don't like that. I just want to order the table and like we just share.
Yeah.
I don't want to eat one meal. I'm fat, basically. But I enjoy the sharing culture. That's why I like Korean barbecue or like this Turkish house spot. It's like you get a plate of dip and you get all this other stuff, and you don't eat one thing. It's like, oh, pass me this, pass me that. Like, I think that's like what a lot of like higher up like restaurants are kind of missing, where you go in for like the food and you want to eat your own a la carte thing.
But you want to taste a lot.
Yeah, but you know, there's sometimes you really go get a degustation or something, and you're like, okay, that's straight up delicious. But for the most part, I want to like go in with a big group of people, and I just want to share it. So whatever like Cuisine can facilitate that, let's go for it.
Nice. Before we get to the final part, do you have any interesting hobbies that you do outside of your main content creation? Because obviously you're traveling all the time throughout New South Wales, and you have a lot of amazing photos, of course, which I'll link to your Instagram handle in the podcast.
At the Tan Trap.
Yeah, the Tan Trap. And anything that would be surprising, that's a bit unusual.
Anything that's surprising to people. I would like, if I have to like sum up like things that I like, it's obviously creative stuff. Anything that you have to do with a camera, I really enjoy. I really like that. I love cooking. I love anything to do with food. I don't care how much you charge me. Like, if it's good food, I'll pay it. I really don't care. I'm dead serious about it.
Nice.
Like, I just don't care.
How did you stay in shape then if you did nothing for 9 months, man?
This pandemic's done some stuff to my stomach, my fat percentage, but you know, we'll work that off when the gym's open again. And anything that's like outdoors, traveling, naturey, like I love like, you know, growing plants, like vegetables. I just like being outside. I don't really like being inside too long. I want to feel nature. Yeah. Yeah. And it's healing. Like being outdoors is therapy. Like
totally.
I said, like movement is therapy for me too. Like,
when you went away the other day, did you camp on these trips, or do you like sleep in a car, or do you have usually a cabin that you'll go to?
Changes every time. Like I'm no stranger to slumming it. Like I grew up in a big family, so like there'll be some places we'll go and like with 6 of us we'll just sleep in one room, just sleep on the floor. Like it doesn't matter.
Nice.
So I'm not high maintenance at all. But it depends. Like I like camping. If you go with a big group, that's not applicable. So like this time I went down to Cuisine just last long weekend. It's about 15 to 17 people, so you don't really want to camp like that. So you get a house.
You get a house.
But if you go,
that's still so nice to do.
This following weekend, I'm going bikepacking in Cuisine National Park. We're just going to go to a hut, ride out to a hut, and then stay at the hut, and then.
Fuck, you have such an organised group of friends, man. It's so good.
No, but that's the thing as well. That's the thing that like.
Who's organising that?
No, see, that's the thing as well. It's like, I think like the way I grew up also affects the way my I don't know if you want to call it social organisation or not.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have like one group of friends. Like, a lot of them. It's gonna sound like an insult, but it's not really. Like for example, like I go back to Perth. Like they live, like all my friends back in Perth live differently. Like they all have houses, they all have partners, they all have like plots of land that they're trying to build on. Like whatever. Like it's just what it is. But like, a lot of people have like one friend group, and like that's great. It's amazing. You've got this like solid comfort system, solid support system, and it is what it is. But that's not how I do it. I have friends. I try to have. I mean, I think it's just the way I was raised. Like, like I don't really adventure with the same people every time. Because people know what I like to do, or like if you're keen on the outdoors, and you make it clear to me, like I'll invite you.
But you're organising these trips.
Some of them no.
Nice.
Yeah.
It was funny. I was talking to my girlfriend today about something that she has. Like her friends are as well, Swedish people just generally very organised. You know, like they'll organise she was telling me about this day we're going to go and we're at like a golf day where this girl organises a golf like tea times, then you have this fucking beautiful lunch after, and then there's like organised games, you know, drinking games and shit, and then you go back to this place for dinner, and it's like a full day, and I'm like, that sounds so good, and it will be so good. Whereas my mates, and I'm not organising shit, right? Like I'm way too casual to organise stuff. My mates is like, yeah, just come over. And that'll be it, you know. Even though there's so much more you could do, which will be lovely.
See, I know exactly.
It's just come over, bring some beers.
I know exactly what you mean, because I got friends like that. I got friends that want to travel the world. I got friends that want to do a hike with me. You know, like it's important to like not like like I always think about this bubble. Like I don't want to have a bubble. I don't ever want to have a bubble, because this bubble is like, it's great. It could be the best thing for you, but for me, it's the worst thing for me. I don't like feeling like I'm stagnant, like I'm here, this is good, this is comfortable. Like I want to feel challenged, I want to feel pain, I want to feel failure, I want to feel success, I want to feel all these things. And I don't care if I have to lose my eyesight or lose like my parent, or like, you know, it's just gonna, like, life decides that for you, and it's about how you are going to rebound it that is the most important. And not everyone has the tools to rebound like that. And I'm, like I said before, I'm privileged. Like even when I lived in Oman, like I lived very normally. Like, you know, there are expats that live very extravagantly, and I know people like that. But you know, I
like the current sultan.
Yeah, like I lived, like when I was over there, I lived so normally, dude. Like it's like I was here, but I always just had my freedom. I always just had my freedom. I valued that more than like money. I value that more than like fame. I value that more than anything. Like I just want to be able to always say what I want to do and do exactly that. If not, I get pissed off. And I'm not fun to be around. And so I'm organized in the way that I know my organization level is like very like how do you put it? It's very broad. But if something doesn't go to plan, I'll know that it didn't go to plan, and I won't like it, and I'll be a bit on edge. But like, you know, you'll deal with it. But like, I'm never one to like be like, okay, we're gonna go golfing at like tea times at 12, and we're gonna go have brunch over here, and then come back to my place. I'll have someone cooking.
But see, I like it if that's organised for me.
Yeah, I love that too. Like I said, I'm more like a go with the flow guy. I'm good with organisation, but I'm not like a every detail type of guy. Like I want to see what happens. Like what happens if a spanner gets thrown in there? What will we do?
That variability is so important. Like, I hope one day you get a chance to come to Norway for a bit with me, which for a person who likes taking photos in the outdoors, it's the Mecca.
I'm there.
It's unreal.
I'm there.
You know, because if I end up living in Stockholm, like it'll be so easy to go over. Last thing, okay, so my idea for this interviews was, it was spurred on by something I heard between two famous podcasters, Tim Ferriss, Jocko Willink. They were talking about the path in the context of this book, Samurai. The Way of the Warrior by Musashi. And it's a story about a man whose singular focus is becoming the best swords person in the world who ever lived, period. And it's the highest factor, and it's about this singular path journey. And then in reflection, when they were talking about it, Ferriss was talking about how he doesn't know what his path is. If someone asks him, what's your path? He doesn't know. But he knows when he's not on it. And that really resonated with me so much, because doing all this trial and error, trying to figure out something I enjoy, I don't know what my path is, but I know when I'm not on it. You know, when I'm like in the middle of the day drinking beers for the third day in a row with the same guys, I know I'm not on the path. Despite the fact that might be nice, I know I'm not on the path, and it like depresses me, you know, like it really affects me. But then when I do something like this, like learn loads about a person who I've known for a long time, produce a bit of content that's going to have evergreen value on YouTube. Imagine when you get to look back on this when you're like 40. That's amazing.
That'd be funny.
Like,
I'll just look at myself and be like, boy, he was an idiot.
Yeah. But nonetheless, like that ability to just take a snapshot in time, I really enjoy it. I know it's like on the path, and on the path is always experienced according to what new experiences come into your life. And I imagine it like this: you're a man or woman on a drawbridge, and you've got a few slats of wood under your arm, and you're standing 4 slats in, but there are no additional slats. You can only put down another slat when you do something that is according to your path. And if you step off the slat, you fall into the river and you climb back up and you start again. The bridge never ends. It's not like there's a goal you work towards, but it's just about moving along your path.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, like what you said just there, it's sort of similar to what I said about like how I envision my life. It's like, I get to choose my direction that I'm heading in, but I might zig and zag in that direction. You know, like life might throw some shit at me and it might send me off path, but I'm going to come back to the path that is intrinsically like natural to myself. Just kind of what he said. He was just like, do I know what my path is? No, because anything could happen. But I do know, like you said, I do know when I'm within those bounds, and I know that I'll always come back to those bounds.
That's like recognizing what brings you back there.
Yeah, and it's kind of like an interesting experience where you were talking about with the slats on the bridge. It's just like life is sort of like, let's say if you were gonna die, right? And you were at the gates of heaven or whatever, and you're trying to go in, and you look up and there's a judge there that's like gonna assess whether you're worthy of entering heaven or going to hell. But that's you. Like you are your own judge. So it's like, how do you bring perspective and bring understanding to your life, so that when you look back at it, when you're like potentially at the gates of wherever you're trying to get to, and you look back at yourself, can you go, fair enough, you did exactly what you wanted to do and you respected the process and now you're here, pass? Or will you look at yourself and go, fuck, I really didn't do what I wanted here, and what's worth more, the fear of failure or the regret of not going after what you want to do? And I'm going to take the fear every time. I don't know about you.
Nice. Let's leave it there.
Yeah.
Cheers, Jono. Do you have? Oh, I should say, is there anything else you want to say?
I want to say that we are sitting in my office that hasn't been used for a long time. Just put a few beers and I'm here with Focus, and he's a good bloke. You should listen to his stuff, and also check out my photography if you feel like it.
Yeah.
And also if you don't, it's cool with me.
Cheers, man. Appreciate it.